And I think we need to clarify some things. Left by itself entirely, if you took any one of these things, probably aside from a Ouija board, it's not as bad if you just have this Pokemon phenomenon if there wasn't an attachment to the rest of all of this stuff. In other words, it's like you brought out the idea of the Lord of the Rings. That's set in a fantasy world, and left by itself, that's fine. The danger lies in the getting used to the idea that we can have or the wish to have psychic powers and to be able to cast spells, and it conditions your mind to have those things be just a natural part of life. Isn't that where the big problem starts to come in?
Well, it is, because you're correct. I would certainly agree. Just having Pokemon cards wouldn't really probably amount to anything. But all we're pointing out is that once again, each step of the way can lead to the next involvement. That was my own personal experience as a older teenager, my early 20s, where I started going to a church known as Unity Church. And there I met an individual who was offering classes in what they called silver mind control. It's a technique to learn how to relax in your mind and relax your body. They offered these classes in their home. And so along with a number of other people, we attended those classes, and that was fine. That wasn't bad. But there we met an individual who that offered classes in age regression. Now, age regression is something where supposedly they talk to you and put you almost like in a trance-like state, and you're supposed to remember a previous life. Well, there is no previous life to remember, because when people die, they are dead. But these people believed in reincarnation, so they believe that once you die, you just live in a new life, and that continues as a cycle, that you are continually taking on another life. So supposedly they're suggesting that you can go back in time, as it were, and remember some previous lives, and they offer suggestions to you. So if you've got a little bit of a imagination, and if you're somewhat susceptible to these influences, you could start to create these previous lives in your mind. Well, the next thing you know, we were introduced to a tarot card reader. And tarot cards is a means of fortune telling, using these different kind of cards to try to tell you about your future. Again, all these things started to add up to where finally we went on a weekend retreat out into the woods, and it was a beautiful campsite, and it was a lovely setting. But there were psychic readers there was tarot card reading, there was astrologers, palm readers, handwriting analysis, age regression, all these paranormal people were there who practiced paranormal phenomena. And the long and short of it was, it all started with me going to a certain church where certain people felt free to draw different members out to attend these classes. And one thing led to another. That was my personal experience. And so all I relate to now when I'm talking to young people is that you could start out with something that's very innocent and left by itself would not be a problem. But it can, and quite often does, open the mind for the young person then to start looking more and more into other paranormal or psychic type of things that can lead one, down the wrong path, as it were.
Okay, so really what you're saying, you're talking about a process that's very, very subtle, and the process is that of becoming desensitized. You get used to something, and then something else can get built upon that, and you get used to that, and something else can get built upon that, and before you know it, you're in a really bad situation. Rick, we have one of the young people here who had a question for me before, because she's saying, what question? because we were talking about, when we talk about this, it sounds like we're saying, wow, everything is evil around you, so it was almost like run away from everything. So Amy, tell us your name.
Amy.
Good job. And what was your question?
Is it bad or, like, dangerous to know or be associated with people who practice witchcraft?
Rick, did you hear that?
Yep.
Okay, why don't you respond to that?
Well, you know, it's one of those things that, let's say you have a choice on whether or not you can associate with someone who is a witch or practices witchcraft. If you have a choice, I'd say in that situation, I would choose not to associate with them, because I would question their judgment and their wisdom, and I would question how involved they might become in the future. You know, in other words, they could start out, very simply involved with witchcraft and more out of curiosity. But it could become more and more involved, and you might not realize it, and then you could possibly have a problem with this person in the future. So, in my own opinion, if you have a choice, I would avoid making those type of people my friends. But if you're in school or have a job where there's someone who's there that is in a classroom, or someone who works with you, as long as you don't have to be involved with them any more than just being in the same room or just being polite, then I would say you're okay. But I wouldn't get any more, personally, I wouldn't be any more involved with a witch or a sorcerer than just being polite.
Okay, Amy, does that answer your question? They can't hear a nod. And she's nodding. Okay, thanks. And folks, if you have a thought, give us a call at 443-9782, 443-WSUB. And for anybody sitting here in the room with us, any of these campers at this Bible Youth Camp, if you have questions or comments, feel free to come on up. We won't embarrass you, I promise. Jonathan, you're pointing to another scripture.
Yes, I would like Rick's comments on 1 Timothy 4, verses 1 and 3. Now the Spirit speaketh expressly that in the latter times some shall depart from the faith, giving heed to seducing spirits and doctrines of devils, forbidding to marry, and commanding to abstain from meats, which God hath created to be received with thanksgiving of them which believe and know the truth.
Rick, any thoughts as to application of that scripture in our day today?
Well, it's very powerful. Here, we're making a dramatic turn, leaving what we would say is openly unchristian, witchcraft and psychic and paganism, and now we're looking at something that the Apostle Paul, in writing to Timothy, tells us that there's going to come a time there's going to be a deception, and this deception is forbidding to marry and forbidding to eat meat. And the real deception is it's going to come through those who claim to be representing Christ. And when we look historically, what we find is the Roman Catholic Church had taught for centuries that you were forbidden to eat meat on Fridays, or this was a mortal sin. And interestingly enough, they finally changed that at the Vatican Councils, and now, in our day, it's okay for Catholics to eat meat on Friday. It's as it were, they rescinded that, because it was so odd and so peculiar. But the other part of that scripture tells us that there would be a deception of forbidding to marry. And the Roman Catholic Church forbids its priests and its nuns to marry. Now, it's done under it's done with the intention to make it look holy, that these priests have committed their life. And I believe that individual priests do feel that they're doing it with the best of intentions. And with individual Catholics, we certainly feel that there are many good Catholics and that they are God-fearing people. But the problem is that this is a false doctrine or a false teaching that has come into the church. And the end result of forbidding to marry has led to this horrible condition in the Roman Catholic Church today, and especially in this enlightened country, the United States and in Canada,